Okay. Well, now I think this is a great opportunity for us to shift into your actual framework because your framework addresses all of these things. And you've mentioned some of it. You've mentioned it being 3 points, but I believe when we had a conversation, you said picture a triangle and think of intent, purpose, and impact. So, can you walk us through your framework and how does proper analytics transform decision making when you're trying to figure out what resources to invest in?
Yeah, so Tim, one of the biggest issues that I encounter with people saying that they don't use their analytics is overwhelm. So my
Mhm.
goal has always been how do I help people um, make it easy to use? How do we make data easy to use? And the easiest way that I've been able to come up with so far is to ask questions. Now, why questions are important is because when you look at your data, the reason most people get into overwhelm is because they're trying to look for insights. They're waiting for something to jump out on the page from them
Mhm.
and say, "Hey, look at this. This is going to make all the difference." So, rather than and again, if you're going to gather insights, you're going to want to look at as much data as possible, which
Mm.
is the thing that then causes overwhelm. But when you flip it over to asking questions, even one question can be super powerful in moving the needle. So again, it doesn't have to be a lot. There doesn't have to be a lot that you have to be looking at. But what's important is you are asking a question about what you need to know about your business right now. So the next question I encounter then is, well, what question do I need? What's the question I need to ask? And so when you framework is all about qualifying the questions that you need to ask. And if you think of a triangle, there's three sides to it. We've talked about the value side of the
Mhm.
triangle where you've got vanity, interesting, and useful data. The next side to the triangle is about intent, where you're asking, why am I using this question? Am I trying to diagnose something? I have a problem that I'm trying to find the answer and fix. So are you trying to
Okay.
diagnose something? Are you trying to monitor something, how well you're doing? Call it a KPI, like key
Mhm.
performance indicator, a lot of people. But really what you're doing there is monitoring how well things are doing. And then the third thing that you might be using the data for is to forecast. So that's where you get into, you're going to launch a new campaign or a product or an offer, and you're going to because you have, this is for a more advanced company in their analytics, but they have enough history with their working with their data and trends and patterns to start saying, now we're going to launch this, and this is what we're predicting is going to happen.
Okay.
So those are three intents that you can use your data or your question for.
Mhm.
So if you can identify what intent your question is, that's another qualifier. And then the third side to that triangle is about impact, which we talked about. And the impact is where everything comes together because you know that question is related to your business. You know what target you're trying to come up with or you're expecting to see so that you can take an action. So when you can answer all three sides of those triangles to do with their value, intent, and impact, now you have a question that's going to be valuable to answer for your business. And once you have that question and you've answered all those things, you can go in and just find the specific data point or couple of data points that are going to answer that question for you. And that may be for right now all that you ever look at. Until you answer that question, when that question is answered, now I can guarantee you, as I see this happen all of the time, it's going to lead to other questions. People are
Absolutely.
worried about one question, like it it doesn't even have to be the right question. It just has to be a useful question that will help you do something in your business you can take action on. And the questions snowball, and sometimes they snowball so quickly we have to go, whoa, hold the phone here. We're going to park some of these questions for a bit because we're getting ahead of ourselves. But they all of a sudden they start seeing the potential of I can look at this, I can look at that, I can look at that, and now all of aspects or questions that we've all had about our business in the back of our head saying, gee, I wish I could know blah. We have a way to access an answer for them through looking at the data.
I love that. There's a lot of things in there that I would love to unpack. Let's start with being intentional and how it affects different business stages. So, if you're an early stage business, you and I both know most early stage businesses aren't really setting their data up to be able to track. But you spoke to advanced businesses, and advanced, I'm going to put a different spin to it. I'm going to say they're more seasoned. They've been around longer. You can be advanced in a lot of different ways. There are some businesses that have been around for a long time that aren't necessarily advanced because they're still using the same strategies and things that they had when they first started their business. So the amount of years you're around doesn't necessarily equal how wise you are about your audience and your brand and how to be able to do everything. But when you spoke to being intentional, I'd love to be able to cover. So for early stage businesses versus seasoned businesses, some of these seasoned businesses have the data because they put those things in place early on so that they'd have the history to be able to research so that they can then start to pull at different threads to find things. So there were a couple of things in there. One, I would want to make sure that early stage businesses understand the importance of putting these things in place. So when they were switching with Google Analytics, we've had this
Yep.
conversation. And my thing was, I don't have that level of traffic because I don't promote my business in that way. I want to select. It's like going apple picking. I want to pick the ones that I want to be able to work with because I know what kind of results I can get. So for me, it's a little bit different. But when we were looking at traffic, my thing is, well, I can't tell if I had it set up right because I don't have enough traffic. And your thing was there were other things that you can look at, Sean. So it was understanding that and understanding where I was at, but also explaining just because you're not going to be able to see the level of traffic doesn't mean that you don't put those things in place. You put those things in place so that when you do get to the point where you're generating enough and you've got enough history, it puts you in a position where you can start asking different questions. So the questions that you may start off asking are not the questions that you'll end up asking as you get smarter about the questions that you're asking. Once you get the one question, like you said, it doesn't have to be the right question. It can just be a smart enough question that leads to you asking the question that you actually need to ask. So I just want to make sure that I pause there to really be able to speak to that because, again, we're talking about numbers and analytics, but there's real world things in that you can apply that allow you to be able to see it in ways that you might not look at it. Some people are really just going to be sales focused and they're saying, I'm not into numbers. Cool, that's okay. Understand that in order to find the right answer, you have to ask the right questions. And sometimes you don't start off with the right question. Sometimes you have to ask questions that get you better answers that lead to the question that you actually need to get where you want to be able to go. And from what you described, you're helping people ask better questions so that they can get to the results and the answers, or the way that I tend to describe it, their definition of success. You may think that you want to be able to do certain things, but when you realize what it would take for you to be able to accomplish that, then it's like, well, I don't know that I want to do it that way. So
Yeah.
it gives you an opportunity to be able to figure out how to be able to do it in a way that aligns with your current circumstances, your surrounding circumstances, and whatever you have going on in your life. So I just wanted to speak to it from a different standpoint so that people can understand what it was that you were saying, not just from the number standpoint, but from it'd be nice to know what questions to ask standpoint, so that if you are outsourcing, you know what questions to be able to ask to find out if the person that you're outsourcing work to is doing what you want them to do. Kind of goes back to what we were saying is everybody moving in the right direction? And you're helping people ask the right questions to make sure that everyone is moving in the right direction.
Yeah, and even having people you bring up a good point around that I don't have enough traffic. And I always say it doesn't matter how much traffic you get because you're not necessarily looking at what's that number. Because a next level question that could be important and provide you some insights is where's the traffic coming from? And if you
Mhm.
don't have your analytics set up, you can't answer that question. So for example, somebody who say relies a lot on referrals. Well, I can almost guarantee you that all those referrals went and checked out your website. So you can use your analytics to see where did they check out from. Like you can set things up so that you can tell the difference between a word of mouth referral versus a referral on social or through an association or things like that. So you can actually see where are those referrals coming from and perhaps find out that the association is sending me a ton of referrals versus the ones I always thought it was like friends and family word of mouth. But look who's checking out your website. The data can tell you where those are coming from. So even though you may not have a lot of traffic, which is consistent with people who have a large referral
Mhm.
source for their business, it can still be very helpful. Like maybe you want to double down on the association interactions that you have because they're working
Right.
really well for you. So again, just because you don't necessarily have a lot of traffic doesn't mean that the data isn't useful for you. And that may be the only question that you ask is, where's my website traffic coming from? That's all you ever need to know. But it's going to give you a lot of information on where you can ensure your referral streams are going to come from, and maybe which
Hmm.
ones you can stop paying attention to so as much as you thought that you needed to. So having, even for the early stage businesses, having that in place, and it, quite honestly, it becomes a habit. You're developing a skill. You're exercising that muscle for when you get bigger, so to
Oh no,
speak,
I
or you
get it.
get more into it. So that's just my little soapbox moment for I don't have enough traffic. I shouldn't pay attention to analytics.
No, and it's a valid point, and it brings a lot of value to. There's not just a reason to put it into place. There's things that you can actually do with it. You just have to know what questions to be able to ask. You have to know. I don't think there are people that knew that they could decipher where they're getting the referrals from so that they can be more
Yeah.
intentional about where they spend their time. I know that there has been a good chunk of time. We both attend a lot of webinars and seminars and events and different things like that. And I know once I started looking at my analytics, I started to be able to identify where I should spend more of my time.
Yeah.
Like who was giving me like, oh yeah, no, that's great. And I'd love to know more, but I was putting more out and I wasn't necessarily getting anything back, as opposed to going to some platforms where I realized I could have a shorter conversation. People were faster to be able to say, well, let's get on a call and let's discuss this further. Where I was spending a lot of time on a platform where I was putting a lot of information out and not getting a lot back, why would I continue to put that level of effort into it when I can prioritize something where I'm seeing those types of returns? So it didn't require a lot of traffic to figure that out. It just required understanding where that traffic was coming
Yeah.